Good evening, you're watching London Live News at 6 with Alicia Edwards. Coming up tonight, karaoke, altercations and abuse. Sue Gray's Partygate report sees the PM take full responsibility for the events in Number 10 during lockdown. The £4.25 billion sale of Chelsea has been formally signed off as ministers give the green light to Todd Bowley's takeover. We'll have an update on London's weather in the next 10 minutes. Plus, giant corgis, floral teacups and postbox displays. Just some of the creations you can see on the streets of SW3 this week as Chelsea in Bloom returns. And in fair Verona do we lay our scene, but with a twist, as a new take on the star-crossed lovers sees two familiar Shakespearean characters in a tale of their own. All of that on the way this evening. But first, an official inquiry into the Partygate scandal has said the leadership in Boris Johnson's government must bear responsibility for the culture which led to COVID lockdown rules being broken. The report gave details of gatherings at which officials drank so much they were sick, sang karaoke, became involved in altercations and abused security and cleaning staff at a time when millions of people across the country were unable to see friends and family. The report said some of the more junior officials who attended parties believed that their involvement in some of these events was permitted given the attendance of senior leaders. It also showed the reaction of a top aide who warned of the comms risk of going ahead with one of the leaving dues. The Metropolitan Police has issued 126 fines for rule breaches in Number 10 and Whitehall, with the PM receiving a single fixed penalty notice for his birthday party. Boris Johnson has offered his apologies, but also claimed he considered it appropriate to thank leaving members of staff for their service.
I'm happy to set on the record now that when I came to this House and said in all sincerity that the rules and guidance have been followed at all times, it was what I believed to be true. It was certainly the case when I was present at gatherings to wish staff farewell, and the House will note that my attendance at these moments, brief as it was, has not been found to be outside the rules.
Boris Johnson there on his reaction to the report. Well, Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer called the PM to resign and said this report showed that the government had treated the sacrifices of the British people with utter contempt.
It is now impossible to defend the Prime Minister's words to this House. This is about trust. Because during that May 20 press conference, the British public were told normal life as we know it is a long way off, but that wasn't the case in Number 10. Even now, after 126 fines, they think it's everyone else's fault but theirs. They expect others to take the blame whilst they cling on. They pretend that the Prime Minister has somehow been exonerated, as if the fact that he only broke the law once is worthy of praise. The truth is, they set the bar for his conduct lower than a snake's belly. And now they expect the rest of us to congratulate him as he stumbles over it.
That was Sir Keir Starmer. Well, the Mayor, Sadiq Khan, has also responded to the report, saying that the findings today confirm a failure of leadership and also called on the PM to resign. Well, it comes as figures released show almost 4,000 people were fined in the capital for not wearing a face covering on public transport when it was compulsory. Mandatory wearing of masks on TfL services was put in place to help stop the spread of COVID-19. Transport for London announced that face coverings would stop being a condition of carriage from February this year, following the shift in the government's approach towards living with COVID. The £4.25 billion sale of Chelsea has been formally signed off by the UK government. Ministers have given the green light to Todd Bowley's takeover after weeks of negotiations to ensure that current owner Roman Abramovich does not benefit from the proceeds of the deal. The government has confirmed that the proceeds of the sale will be used for humanitarian causes in Ukraine. Abramovich is reported to be setting up an independent charitable foundation, insisting the scale of investment could change the face of humanitarian aid. Railway workers have voted to go on national strike, threatening major summer travel disruption. RMT General Secretary Mick Lynch says the union is planning a campaign of industrial action from mid-June onwards after railway workers voted overwhelmingly to strike in a dispute over jobs, pay and conditions.
We've got a dispute with the national rail companies, Network Rail and the train operators, which is 16 companies in total. They're seeking to cut thousands of jobs from our railway industry. They're seeking to dilute our terms and conditions without agreement. And we're also in the third year of a pay freeze, which we have to resolve. We need to get our members a decent pay rise. We're hoping we can negotiate that now. We've got a strong mandate to take industrial action if we need to, but we're looking to settle this dispute as quickly as we can. Well, we've given a bit of time to the companies. We're going to review any strike dates or strike mandate next week. So we're putting the message out to the companies that we're here and the government here available to negotiate. If we can't get an agreement, we'll put some dates down next week, but the action could be from mid-June onwards.
That was the RMT General Secretary Mick Lynch. Well, in response, Network Rail's chief executive said the RMT has jumped the gun, and a Department for Transport spokesperson urged them to reconsider, saying strikes should always be the last resort. Some other stories in the capital today. The Met are appealing for witnesses after a child was seriously injured in a collision in Wandsworth. Police were called just before 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon to reports of a collision involving a car and a pedestrian in Herondale Avenue. A 5-year-old boy who was riding a child scooter was taken to hospital where he remains in a critical condition. His parents are with him. The driver of the car stopped at the scene and is helping police with their inquiries. No arrests have been made. A 65-year-old cyclist remains in hospital in a critical condition nearly a month after being involved in a serious crash with an e-scooter in central London. The crash happened on Victoria Embankment on the 29th of April, opposite Somerset House at nearly 10 p.m. The Met has issued a statement appealing for dashcam footage, saying that detectives would like to speak to anyone who was in the area at the time. Sadiq Khan has launched a plan to help tackle social inequality in the capital. The scheme sets out 14 actions to address inequalities, including ensuring everyone has a fair chance at getting a job and making digital services more accessible. It involves leaders from sectors ranging from health to business. Now, more on the Queen's upcoming Jubilee celebrations. A huge gold coin has been produced by the Royal Mint to mark the celebrations. The 15-kilogram coin was commissioned by a private UK collector and is the largest the Mint has ever produced. Worth £15,000, it took around 400 hours to be created using intricate engraving and laser technology. Well, also kicking off the start of those celebrations, makeup artist at Madame Tussauds put the finishing touches on the waxwork figure of the Queen. The installation sees the Duke and Duchess of Sussex being reunited with the rest of the royals for the Jubilee, albeit in the form of waxworks. Right, let's take a look at the weather now. Cloud cover is sticking around overnight. It's dropping down to 12 degrees. Tomorrow we can expect some sunny spells in the morning and reaching 20 degrees later in the day. Looking ahead to Friday, it's still going to be around 20 degrees, but there's going to be more sun breaking through the clouds. Saturday's a similar picture, staying bright and, more importantly, dry. Looking forward to that sunshine. Right, it's time for a break now, but coming up, the cost of living crisis heaps pressure on employers as office costs soar. And we head to Chelsea, where the streets are lined with floral displays.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live.
Hello there, welcome back. Some other stories affecting Londoners. Average petrol prices have reached a new record high of 170.4p a litre. New figures show diesel reached 181.4 pence for the first time. That's according to data firm Experian Catalyst. RAC fuel spokesman Simon Williams called it another unfortunate landmark. Missing person posters and billboards have had a revamp with the help of updated technology. The new posters include less information, which researchers suggest can sometimes bombard people, and feature 3D images, which are considered to be more memorable. They also include a QR code to encourage passers-by to tap into social media and spread the word, and background maps of where the person was last seen. And more than 2/5 of British butterflies are threatened with extinction, with experts warning that action is needed to prevent the species being lost. The latest red list for British butterflies shows a worsening picture for many species as climate change and nitrogen pollution pile on the pressure for insects already struggling with the changes to landscapes. Now, the increasing cost of living isn't just affecting London households, but also businesses in the capital. According to new research, firms are losing £9 billion a year to office management. Gabriella Hersham is the CEO of Huckletree, the workspace company behind the research, and is here with me now. Gabriella, thank you so much for joining me. So how are London businesses feeling the pinch, feeling the impact of the cost of living crisis?
So as you say, we found that with the rise of the cost of living, business owners are really getting bogged down in the day-to-day office management. And as you say, our research pointed to them losing over 9 weeks a year in office management, which equates to nearly £9 billion of annual time spent. And I think that the areas that they are really getting pinched down in, specifically in London, seem to relate to the elements surrounding the actual properties themselves. We all know that London business owners, the property management has never been made easy for us. And I think more so than ever before, today we're really seeing business owners just feeling it with regards to property management, which is so broad and covers things like utilities, fire alarms, intruder alarms, maintenance issues, when really what they need to be doing is focusing on growing their businesses, regrowth, scaling their businesses, strategizing. So I think it's a bit of a crunch point.
How can this be better managed? What's the answer?
I think one of the solutions definitely, so Huckletree, as you know, works within the flexible workspace industry. And I think one of the solutions is going to workspaces, of which there are plenty all over the capital, which provide an all-inclusive solution. So where you have one cost that covers everything from utilities to maintenance to Wi-Fi, where you have all your facilities management included, and actually, most importantly, where you're able to provide a really exciting back to work and back to office experience for your employees, because I think encouraging employees to come back to the workspace is no mean feat and is something that we all need to be focusing on today.
That idea of people coming back to the office now after having that ability to work from home and realising in some cases that does work, why would people come back to the office? What's the incentive to do so, particularly in these shared working environments when you may not know if the colleagues that you want to speak to that day are actually going to be there?
100%, but what you do know is that you will have opportunities for collaboration and for interaction, and maybe not just with people from your own company, from within the business that you work at, but also within other companies, relevant companies to you. So for example, at Huckletree, we curate our ecosystem. So each of our hubs is a kind of collection of industries that work really nicely together. And then when you're meeting different employees from different businesses, it's actually relevant to you. So I think, yes, working from home works sometimes, not always, but definitely going back to work and really having that experience of being able to collaborate, being able to speak to people, to kind of ideate together, I think is just so important.
Your research obviously shows the cost of office working. There's two sides to everything, although it can be more costly. There are knock-on effects to anything like this. The businesses that rely on people being here in London, in offices, in those buildings and the surrounding areas. Do we need to be protecting office working?
I mean, I think that we totally need to be protecting it to the sense of encouraging people to be going back to the office. And it's interesting that you make the point about the kind of the two sides of the coin, because over the past sort of year or two, there have been so many debates around, well, actually, it's more costly to have people working in the office, and why don't we all work from home? But I think the flip side of that is look at the productivity, and it's now proven and well documented that the productivity of people when in the office is so much greater than when we're working in silos. No great business was ever built in silo. We all know that now. And so definitely, protecting office working, encouraging people to come back to work with the right spaces, with spaces that focus on well-being and really think about the holistic needs of every employee, I think is absolutely crucial in today's world.
Of course, your idea of having people in these shared office environments, there's still going to be costs for your business, inevitably, with the rise. How are you seeing the effects of the cost of living?
100% we are, and it's been going on for a few months now. Look, we're a business like any other business which has a P&L that we need to manage, and our P&L is very specifically structured around our spaces. So when our energy bill goes up, when the cost of salaries go up, etc., this directly impacts us as it will any other business. So it's challenging times, I think, for every business owner, and we all need to think creatively about how we're going to continue to support our clients and our customers, but make sure that we are making ends meet in this new world. So it's going to be a challenging few months ahead.
Yeah, not an easy time for anyone. Thank you so much for joining us.
You.
There we are, Gabriella Hersham, there, CEO of Huckletree. Now, including a giant corgi and a floral royal crest, Chelsea in Bloom sees the streets filled with flowers. Running alongside the main show, it sees the streets decorated this week to mark the event. A large map shows where people can find all the installations, which run along the King's Road and up to Knightsbridge.
Chelsea in Bloom is an extraordinary community event that sees shops, restaurants, hotels bring the Chelsea Flower Show out into the local neighbourhood. It's actually London's largest free flower festival and an incredible competition that this year has over 90 participants, all competing for coveted awards judged by the RHS. This year's theme is British Icons, and actually it marks the start of an incredible fortnight of Jubilee activity. So as well as symbolising the start of next week's extraordinary celebrations, it actually takes inspiration from the symbols and the emblems that make us Great Britain. So this year we have 9 central installations dotted around the neighbourhood. Of the central installations, we have the incredible Queen's Head that's behind me. This is on Sloane Square. When you go up to Sloane Street, we've got these amazing vintage floral post boxes, a huge corgi, an incredible royal crest with a lion and unicorn. And then heading back down to Sloane Square, we have a Sentry Guard standing proud. We then head to Duke of York Square, where we have an Alice in Wonderland tea party. And then heading up to the King's Road, we have sort of some mini love with a vintage mini. All of these are visible on the Chelsea and Bloom website, where you can follow a map and explore the trail. You can enjoy complimentary walking tours and rickshaw rides, all of which can be booked from Sloane Square, where the information point is. And we also have over 90 participants from shops, hotels, restaurants.
I've been part of the Chelsea and Bloom since it started, which was, I think, about 7 years ago now. And we've had various themes throughout the last 7 years. And every year we get more bonkers in our window. We didn't really know what to do. We were given this theme and I had to think about it for a couple of days. And then I thought, I know what, we're going to do a cup of tea and we're going to have steam coming out of the teacup. And so Phil, who's my wonderful, wonderful florist, he's fantastic. I ring him up and he lies on the floor with an ice pack on his head to try and recover and says, yes, good idea, and off we go. I wanted to have a cup of tea, but I wanted steam to come out of it to show that it was a hot cup of tea, because no one drinks cold tea. So we had to make it look as if it was a proper cup of tea. All the British drink a cup of tea. If they're happy, if they're sad, whatever emotion they're feeling, a cup of tea always does it. I think this year is extra special. I mean, we always make a huge effort, and all the retailers do. I also think walking around the streets and seeing what everybody's been doing outside their stores gives everyone a lift. Masses of colour. It's lovely just walking around, particularly if the weather's nice.
This year, our fantastic charity partner is the British Red Cross, of which the Queen is the royal patron. And all proceeds, which you can donate by scanning various QR codes around Sloane Square, will be going to support the Ukrainian refugees. Chelsea and Bloom is a fantastic way to experience the neighbourhood. We hope that it introduces all of our visitors to the wonderful businesses, the creativity and the beauty of the area. And of course, coming back next weekend for the Jubilee celebrations, where there are street parties, loads of live family entertainment, including a screening of the pageant on the Sunday.
Those amazing installations in Chelsea, and well done to Phil the florist there. That teacup display, very impressive. You're watching London Live News at 6 with Alicia Edwards. A reminder of our top story coming up after the break, plus how to make those outdoor spaces, however big or small, look as impressive as in the indoors. Interior designer Michelle Ogundahin has her tips.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live.
Hello there, welcome back. A reminder of our main story this evening. An official inquiry into the Partygate scandal has said the senior leadership in Boris Johnson's government must bear responsibility for the culture which led to coronavirus lockdown rules being broken. The report gave details of gatherings at which officials drank so much they were sick, sang karaoke, became involved in altercations and abused security and cleaning staff at a time when millions of people across the country were unable to see friends and family. The report said some of the more junior officials who attended believed that their involvement in some of these events was permitted given the attendance of senior leaders. It also showed the reaction of a top aide who warned of the comms risk of going ahead with one of the leaving dues. The Met Police had issued 126 fines for rule breaches in Number 10 and Whitehall, with the Prime Minister receiving a single fixed penalty notice for his birthday party. Boris Johnson has offered his apologies, but also claimed he considered it appropriate to thank leaving members of staff for their service.
I'm happy to set on the record now that when I came to this House and said in all sincerity that the rules and guidance have been followed at all times, it was what I believed to be true. It was certainly the case when I was present at gatherings to wish staff farewell, and the House will note that my attendance at these moments, brief as it was, has not been found to be outside the rules.
Boris Johnson there on his reaction to the report. Well, Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer called the PM to resign and said this report showed that the government had treated the sacrifices of the British people with utter contempt.
It is now impossible to defend the Prime Minister's words to this House. This is about trust. Because during that May 20 press conference, the British public were told normal life as we know it is a long way off. But that wasn't the case in Number 10. Even now, after 126 fines, they think it's everyone else's fault but theirs. They expect others to take the blame whilst they cling on. They pretend that the Prime Minister has somehow been exonerated, as if the fact that he only broke the law once is worthy of praise. The truth is, they set the bar for his conduct lower than a snake's belly.
That was Sir Keir Starmer. Well, the Mayor, Sadiq Khan, has also responded to the report, saying that the findings today confirm a failure of leadership and also called on the PM to resign. Well, it comes as figures released show almost 4,000 people were fined in the capital for not wearing a face covering on public transport when it was compulsory. Mandatory wearing of masks on TfL services was put in place to help stop the spread of COVID-19. Transport for London announced that face coverings would stop being a condition of carriage from February this year, following the shift in the government's approach towards living with COVID. The £4.25 billion sale of Chelsea has been formally signed off by the UK government. Ministers have given the green light to Todd Boehly's takeover after weeks of negotiations to ensure that current owner Roman Abramovich does not benefit from the proceeds of the deal. The government has confirmed that the proceeds of the sale will be used for humanitarian causes in Ukraine. Abramovich is reported to be setting up an independent charitable foundation, insisting the scale of investment could change the face of humanitarian aid. Railway workers have voted to go on national strike, threatening major summer travel disruption. RMT General Secretary Mick Lynch says the union is planning a campaign of industrial action from mid-June onwards after railway workers voted overwhelmingly to strike in a dispute over jobs, pay and conditions.
We've got a dispute with the National Rail Companies, Network Rail and the train operators, which is 16 companies in total. They're seeking to cut thousands of jobs from our railway industry. They're seeking to dilute our terms and conditions without agreement. And we're also in the third year of a pay freeze, which we have to resolve. We need to get our members a decent pay rise. We're hoping we can negotiate that now. We've got a strong mandate to take industrial action if we need to. but we're looking to settle this dispute as quickly as we can.
That was the RMT General Secretary Mick Lynch. Well, in response, Network Rail's chief executives. Now, as the weather brightens up for summer and many of us prepare to entertain in the coming weeks, we're all turning more attention to our gardens. With inspiration from Chelsea Flower Show this week, 80% of us agree that the time we spend outdoors improves our mental health. Well, interior designer Michelle Ogundahin has been giving me some much needed advice on how we can all design our outdoor spaces, however big or small.
Well, you know what? What I think is really exciting is that it was an interiors brand, Heels, that actually did some research that said that 80% of us understand that being outside is good for our mental health. So I think it's connected to that, and it's brilliant on two levels. One, that we're talking so freely about mental health, but also that we're really understanding that it isn't just about something to look at, you know, through our windows, from the office, from our homes, that it's about connecting with nature. So yes, I mean, shock horror. I'm here to say it's less about bringing the outdoors in and more about getting the outdoors like ready and up and there for us.
Yeah, enjoying those outdoor spaces. Obviously in London, outdoor space comes at a premium. Until last year, I was living in a flat. I just had my windowsills to decorate, and you can bet that I still did, because it was something nice to look at. Even when people, you know, like myself, have those smaller spaces, what can we be doing to enjoy the limited space that we do have here in London?
I mean, you're right. I think a lot of people aren't going to have a lot of space to play with, nor do you have a lot of storage for kind of big, clunky furniture that's got to be dragged in over the winter. But I think there are kind of a lot of little tips that you can take away. And the biggest one is to just treat it like your indoor space. I mean, a little bit more challenging with a window box, admittedly, but, you know, maybe it's the idea that even if you're just looking like at a brick wall, because a lot of people just have that kind of little slither of space, and you might think, like, seriously, there is nothing I can do with this. Imagine if you painted it bright pink or yellow or even white to make it look really clean. And then the other thing I think I would always invest in is an outdoor rug, because we know how clever those are to use indoors to zone a space. You know, you put it under the dining table and you know here is where we eat. You can do exactly the same outdoors. And these days as well, a lot of them are made from like recycled plastic. So that's a sustainability win-win. But if you kind of, your patio is less than gorgeous, or it's just concrete or anything else that's a bit ugly, you've instantly made it much more cozy and comfortable. And I think that's where we've got to kind of go with this.
Yeah, cover it up. You speak about kind of the idea of painting the walls a different colour. I think a lot of us are a bit nervous about using colour, particularly outside. Should we be? Is it better to have those muted tones outside, or actually is it a place to just go for it?
You know what, when I talk about colour, I always use nature as a reference. I mean, when you look at a flower bed, I don't think anyone goes, oh, I don't think that like poppy colour goes with the green, and it really clashes with like the blue of the sky. I mean, nature does it effortlessly. And so I'd like to encourage people to just, you know what, paint, I think, is like makeup. You can change it. You know, paint the wall pink, see what you feel. See if when you go out there and you just think, oh my gosh, this feels so beautiful, or maybe sky blue. Because, you know, we are a little challenged with our kind of glorious British weather. So actually, maybe we need to go full on fat for kind of yellow or something. Bring the sunshine, you know, artificially.
Obviously, with the great British weather, keeping things outside can be a little bit tricky sometimes. What sort of items are good year-round that can stay outside and keep those outside spaces looking nice, even in the winter months?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of, like these days, a lot of kind of furniture that's designed to be used outdoors is made of things like recycled polypropylene. So although it's plastic, if you're buying for the long term, so it's something you're going to really keep, I think that's absolutely fine. And those you can leave outside. Kind of powder coated metal as well is also perfect. But I think we also need to embrace the fact that a little bit of patina, you know, aging is actually kind of glorious. So wood that where the paint peels and cracks a little bit, actually that's wonderful. It's beautiful. Go for it. But I think also you don't need a whole load of new outdoor kit. I mean, I have 2 chairs that do stay outside all the time because I don't have space to kind of store them. But everything else I've dragged from indoors. So all your cushions and your throws and all those sort of things, you can just use what you have already. But then also a good trick is use like offcuts, like an old, like even paving slab or a small piece of marble on an upturned plant pot, which is exactly what I have. And also, like if you have a really big pot, here I'm going wild now, it's like you can even use the big plant for all your plant cuttings. So it's like a sort of inadvertent composter, and you put the slab on top, it'll get nice and hot. So you've got free fertilizer as well. And it's an instant outdoor coffee table.
Oh, some amazing advice for our viewers there. Another element to think about with outside is lighting. How transformative can that be to a space?
Oh, Alicia, I'm really glad that you've reminded me about that. I mean, who doesn't love a string of fairy lights? And these days you can get solar-powered fairy lights, so you're not even using electricity. And what's brilliant about them is as the light, sort of natural light, goes down, your twinkly fairy lights kind of come up. And I think they can be transformative. So if you imagine, even in your kind of a little yard, you painted that wall yellow, you've put down your outdoor rug, you've dragged out your cushions, you've hung your fairy lights. All you need now is like a place to rest your beer or put your glass of rosé down. A few fragrant plants, you're sorted.
There we are, Michelle Ogundahin there with her tips on how we can brighten up our outdoor spaces. Now it's time for a break, but coming up, Tom Cruise is back just a few decades later as Top Gun returns to our screens.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live.
Hello there, welcome back. You're watching London Live News at 6. Now, in a retelling of one of Shakespeare's best-known plays, a new production is seeing the story of Romeo and Juliet staged through the viewpoint of Mercutio and Tibble. Starcrossed puts a modern twist on the classic and sees the relationship between the pair played out on stage at Wilton's Music Hall. Well, Connor and Tommy play the leading roles and they told me more.
So Starcross runs parallel to Romeo and Juliet, and it's about this twisted tale about where the lovers are Mercutio and Tibble. So it runs parallel to the original story. We have original text, but these sworn enemies are now becoming lovers in this world of Verona.
How does the text work? How much of the original text is in there and how has it been changed?
It's kind of, Rachel, the writer's done it quite cleverly where there's the kind of most recognisable bits of Romeo and Juliet in terms of, actually no, some of their own lines as well in terms of like, you know, but soft, what light through yonder window, these kinds of lines, along with the kind of opening of two households, you know, like in Fair Verona where we lay our scene, these sorts of things drop in to kind of like anchor the story in the world of Romeo and Juliet, but then outside of that, everything is kind of new, but she sort of manages to kind of like straddle the sort of older style whilst it being still quite clearly, what's the word, like communicable isn't a word, but you know what I mean, like like an audience can understand it still quite clearly. Right.
Is it still written in that, you know, classic iambic pentameter, or is it changed a bit?
The parts of it are in verse and like iambic pentameter exactly, and parts kind of switch it up, don't they?
Yes, and there's, you know, Rachel's written new verse as well, so there's original verse and there's garnet verse, as we like to say in the rehearsal room, and then prose and music and all the above, isn't there?
Yeah.
Yes.
Music and all the above, isn't there?
A serious skill. So, Mercutio and Tibble, how much do we have a good idea about these characters from the text that we already have, but there's a lot to play with here, isn't there?
Yeah, loads. Like, it's kind of like with Tibble, for example, so I play Tibble, and like, you don't really learn anything about him in the original, apart from like he's a pretty aggressive, angry dude, and like that's his whole kind of vibe. Whereas Rachel's really fleshed it out, given him a whole kind of backstory, why he is the way he is, all the stuff that he's kind of contending with. You kind of, like the whole story contains a lot more depth, and so then there's a lot more to explore acting wise, and then I guess the same for you. Yeah,
I think kind of the original for our characters is like a tasting plate. And then we've kind of taken that and made a full recipe out of bits that we see in the original. You know, we get flavours in the original, but now we've kind of, the focus on these two characters is much more intense and kind of expanded upon in a way that gives us much more than the face value that people might know of Mercutio and Tibble. They get, you know, so much more, but it all kind of still weaves back to the original text and makes sense. And that's, I think, why it's brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. So what journey have you been on with this show already?
I've been involved with this play for 4 years. Done it in the United States, in New York and in Washington, DC, and have seen it grow from kind of this 45-minute version to the 2-hour version around about that we have now. You know, so I've done it kind of in basements and in reading studios and in fringe festivals in the US, and that went really well. And then I'm really grateful and lucky to be here for the kind of UK premiere, where I've now met Tommy and Gethin and Ed and the team.
Yeah. So like, I mean, for me, it was like I actually auditioned for the player originally, which is the third part who plays kind of all the other characters. And then came through that I was offered Tibble, and then I was like, yeah, okay, cool, sounds good. Yeah.
Connor, for you with Mercutio, a character you feel you know quite well now?
Definitely. I mean, I think part of the reason I'm here is because there's more to find. I think the play has expanded too. There's much more to the play than there once was. And finding it, you know, with Tommy, I mean, we have some quite in-depth and vulnerable scenes. So there was much more to discover, and do a proper run of the show was really something that I was determined to do. So I didn't feel like I'd done it before really, because it feels very fresh and new now in a way that I'm excited to be doing it, but love Mercutio. He's so naughty and brilliant, and you know, there's nothing more that I would like to play him again and again.
Yeah, it's so nice to see these characters explored further. From having obviously experienced audiences previously seeing the show, What's their reaction to seeing it played at this story they know so well played out in this way?
I think the big thing is the surprise of the show. It's so full of intricate turns, and how vivid the language is makes it really accessible. So it's brought a new audience to this genre for sure. Not only being a queer storyline, but just the intensity that we see on these two characters is something that other Shakespeare plays are quite broad in terms of scope. We hit on these personal things, but it is very specific on this love story. So the response was amazing in the US, and I was really grateful to be a part of that reception. So we only hope to kind of deepen that experience for audiences here and make it accessible in a way that the UK audience also respond in a way that is exciting and fresh, and people can connect and go, oh yeah, I feel like that about someone, or my family was like that to me, or even though we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of years ago.
Absolutely. And at Wilson's Music Hall, such an amazing venue for a show like this.
Yeah, really cool. I'd never been prior to, like, we did a photo shoot there the other week, and it's so cool. Like, it's literally, I mean, exactly kind of perfect for a show like this, because you can have a sort of bare stage and it just sort of be presented in the way that, like, we've talked a lot about kind of how Renaissance theatre was, and the idea of, your players coming out and sort of presenting a story, telling us that kind of thing. And so with the kind of, our set is pretty bare, and that just allows for exactly the kind of atmospheric, like, nature of Wilton's to seep into the whole thing. Because we're actually, I don't know, it feels like we're using the space in a kind of integrated way with the show, so that then it sort of, we don't need to rely too much on too many props or too many bits of set or things like that. And yeah, it really adds to it. It's so cool.
There you go. Well, you can see Connor and Tommy in star-crossed at the Wilson's Music Hall from the 1st to the 25th of June. Plenty of time to see that. Now, some film for you. After 36 years, the 1980s action drama Top Gun makes a return this month as US Navy strike fighter Pete Maverick Mitchell lands a job as a test pilot and instructor at the Top Gun Academy. The original movie, which was directed by the late Tony Scott, has been called the quintessential Tom Cruise film of the 80s. At the premiere, Tom Cruise said how great it felt to be back in the role and doing what he loves.
What do we have here? Yeah, here I thought we were special.
Fellas, this here's Bagman.
Hangman.
It's just my interest in life, I think, and my love of what I do. And I've always enjoyed it, and I just, it's like I'm enjoying it even more now.
Everyone here is the best there is. Who the hell are they going to get to teach us?
Captain Pete Maverick Mitchell. Let me be perfectly blunt. You are not my first choice. You are here at the request of Admiral Kazansky, a.k.a. Iceman. He seems to think that you have something left to offer the Navy. What that is, I can't imagine.
With all due respect, sir, I'm not a teacher. Just want to manage expectations.
Well, you want to be prepared, obviously, but you want to be able to bring what you bring to it, your particular skill set. But I felt very comfortable in the hands of not only Tom. This project obviously carries a lot of weight for him, and I knew he would have a lot of stake in it and make sure that it was going to be a very important, well-done piece, but also with Jerry Bruckheimer and everybody at Paramount. They've done this before, and this project means a lot to all of those people, and they weren't going to let it happen without it being perfect, and I think we achieved that.
Good morning, aviators. This is your captain speaking.
And we're off.
Here we go. In 3, 2, 1.
This film was shot in IMAX. We actually put the cast in the real airplanes and shot everything in camera and reel. And it was just designed to be seen in a crowd full of people on the biggest screen you can possibly see it on. And that experience is still unmatched.
We're going into combat on a level no living pilot's ever seen. Not even him.
You think up there you're dead. Believe me.
My dad believed in you. I'm not going to make the same mistake.
What we are all about is the audience, and not an audience.
the audience, and we love nothing more than a shared experience, which I think is something that, especially now, people have lost touch with. And seeing this movie with a crowd and feeling them feel the movie is why we do what we do.
Those are your pilots.
Tom and I are not shy about testing films and showing raw, rough edges to people. We want that input, we want that reaction, we want you to tell us what you need to like the movie. So we had seen it several times with different audiences before the film was finished. So I wasn't at all nervous when we premiered the movie last night in Cannes, except that they're a very tough crowd. And I thought, if you can make it here, you can make it absolutely anywhere. And they were very quiet for the first half hour. I was a little bit nervous. I was thinking, I don't know which way this is going to go. And then you just felt a certain point where they got into the movie. That, to me, that's why I do what I do.
No turning back now.
Come on!
Having any fun yet?
Cast of Top Gun there on the red carpet, and it's not long to wait till you can see that. It's out on Friday. Right, it's time for a final check on the weather now before we leave you. Cloud cover is sticking around overnight. It's dropping down to 12 degrees. Tomorrow, some sunny spells in the morning, reaching 20 degrees later in the day. And looking ahead to Friday, it's still going to be 20 degrees, but there's going to be more sun breaking through the clouds. Saturday's a similar picture, staying bright and, more importantly, dry. Some sunshine to look forward to. And that's all from the news team, but there's more on our social channels at London Live throughout the day tomorrow. From all of us here, have a lovely evening.